Good evening and happy Thursday, fantasy football fans. Welcome once again to Getting Defensive. I am your host, Jeff DiMatteo, founder of Gridiron Ratings. And with me tonight is a very special guest, Football Guy's very own Jeff Bell. Jeff, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Anytime I can talk to another member of the Jeff Hive, I am all for it. So I really appreciate that invitation. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's Thursday night and we have some football tonight and we're getting closer to real football. And, I'm a Devy guy. So we have some games on Saturday, some college football games that are going to matter. So it is the time of year that our blood gets really flowing. We're ready to go and I'm excited.
Awesome. I can feel it. I can feel the energy coming through you, and it's giving me energy now. I'm all excited now because I can't wait for some college ball. Saturday's going to be a big one. I've got I've got my daughter is going to be at a sleepover. I've got my little boy's got a birthday party. I'm kicking everybody out, and I'm going to hang out and watch football, and it's going to be wonderful.
And it's the first meaningful football, so that matters. Now, the games are not fantastic. We have Northwestern and Nebraska as the headliner, and then like the late game, like maybe Vanderbilt playing Hawaii might get you going a little bit, but it's just good to get to that point in the calendar. And, I think, I feel like once we start, it just flies.
It's the first meaningful football since like a USFL game.
Yeah.
If that's meaningful, but but anyway, well, that's great. Yeah, this weekend's going to be killer. Can't wait. Obviously, looking forward to the beginning of the regular season. But Jeff, for the folks that haven't met you before through our show, they probably follow you on Twitter already. It seems like everybody follows you on Twitter. Give us a little bit of background. So you're the dynasty lead over at Football Guys, right?
I am the dynasty lead at Football Guys. Yes, that's correct. So I'm dynasty lead at Football Guys, and we are really focused on trying to build out the dynasty portion of Football Guys. That's kind of something that has been lightly touched in the past, and we're really trying to ramp it up. And going into next off season, we have a lot of plans that we're really going to put in place there. So we're really trying to focus and stretch Football Guys in new and different areas. People have noticed that they brought on a lot of new people the last year or two, and there's kind of been a little bit of a shift there. So it's great. It's behind the scenes. It's just a lot of energy right now, and it's a very exciting time of the year, obviously there, and a brand that I believe in with my whole heart. It's when I got involved with this, there was one place that I wanted to be, and it was Football Guys, and so I'm thrilled to be there. And then you can find me Tuesday nights at 9:30, our live show. We do Devy Royale is our Devy show. And so we do that Tuesdays, 9:30. That is available on Apple, iTunes, whatever it might be that you use for your podcast. And then we have a Patreon through that as well. So the Devy Royale is where we really talk about the college football.
Awesome. So what do you have special going on right now? I know like dynasty season's kind of wrapping up a little bit. The Devy stuff, college football's kicking off, but what's kind of the hot ticket item that you're working on going into the season here?
I'm trying to get my redraft ranks squared away right now. I'm in ECR, so for Fantasy Pros, so I'm really trying to lock those in. I'm taking in right now. I'm working on training camp beat for the Atlanta Falcons for Football Guys, and so I'm writing weekly articles about the Falcons, kind of looking at their preseason games, their camp beats, their preseason beats, who really to identify. I did that last year, and I'm doing it again this year. Last year, if you followed me and paid attention, I told you all about Cordero Patterson. So I was one of those few people that were tooting that horn last year. So that was the real value add there. Now, I don't know that this year there's somebody lurking in the Falcons quite like that, but I do think that Marcus Mariota might be a name to watch the way that from everything I've heard. And I think that he's that type of quarterback that's going to be able to produce in fantasy. But that's really where the focus has been right now, really tightening it down, getting ready for that season, getting ready for those redraft ranks to submit that final copy, doing those training camp reports for the Falcons, ramping up with Devy Royale, getting ready for college football season. That's where most of my time and effort's been focused.
Cool. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're doing the Atlanta Falcons because, I follow most of your stuff via Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always scrolling the timeline, and I'm in Atlanta. So I'm like,
nice.
They're only, 45 minutes away from me down there in Flowery Branch. But I'd love to talk Falcons with you some other time. We can talk about the things we're seeing and hearing on the ground here in the ATL. But anyway,
real quick.
Sure.
D. Alford, what are your thoughts? D. Alford, I don't know if he's going to play, but every single time he's like making a pick every single practice. It seems like he's just an interesting player.
We're going to know a lot more after this weekend. I want to see how all the snap shares break down and all that kind of stuff. And I want to see who's on that last list of cuts. And I think the depth chart's going to see a major shakeup because at every position right now, the Falcons have competition. So it doesn't matter if you're on offense or defense, if you're in the trenches or out in the secondary, every position. So Alfred could see real snaps this year, but the Falcons are kind of a mess. We're hearing a lot about the running back position in terms of, what's going on with Algier, what's going on with Cordero. We're hearing a lot about the DBs. We're hearing a lot about the D linemen. So it's all up in the air because the coaches won't tell us anything.
Yeah.
But D. Orlando Ledbetter has done a heck of a job down here, kind of keeping us in tune with what's going on. But last year, like you, I was on Cordero. I did some projections last season, and I had him as a top 36 running back. And what was funny about it is I have a few friends of mine that I share my projections with before I put anything in the public domain. And I got lambasted for having Cordero up there because it was supposed to be the Mike Davis show. And, so with you, we can share the Cordero club together there. So that's cool. But there's one other thing that we haven't mentioned that you're involved with, and I'd love to touch on it before we kind of hop into the other stuff here tonight. Tell me about Pros versus Joes.
Yeah, Pros vs. Joes. Eric Romanoff has reached out to me. I was able to do it last year. I'm doing it this year as well. So please go to my Twitter, for whom J Bell tolls, and you don't need to follow me or anything. Just check out my pinned tweet, and I've got my link up there. I'm trying to raise money for Nationwide Children's Hospital here in Columbus, Ohio. They do a fantastic job. They really have people coming from all over the world to come to this hospital because it's that good. And I'm a dad. I've got 3 little girls, and so it's right in my backyard. I've done some things in the past with Ronald McDonald House down there, and it just really means a lot. I've had coworkers, and I've seen their kids go through different things that really have stressed and adds that into the family. And so I'm just really trying to raise some money for that. And so please, if you're out there, if you're listening, if you're paying attention, check out my pinned tweet and go ahead, throw your name in there. We can play together in Pros versus Joes. I'd be happy to play with you. You can be the pro, I'll be the Joe. It's all good. And we'll just have a good time playing for it. We did last year. I made it to the playoffs. There was like an 8-person bracket. I got knocked out by Matt Harmon. So Matt Harmon is a guy that, he's good. He knows what he's doing. But I did years ago, I did the Yahoo Listener League, and I played with Matt. And so was able to make a relationship with Matt there. And he was somebody that encouraged me to get started making content. And he's a big reason why, he's a former football guy as well. He's a big reason why I even got started. And so it was one of those that I think in that listener league, I might have knocked him out of the playoffs. And so he got me back. But no, he's a fantastic guy.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I would like to let you know that pre-show, what I was doing when I was fuddling around and not setting up the show like I was supposed to, I was actually making a donation. Gridiron Ratings just made a $50 donation to help you out.
Oh, and thank you so much. That really
gets you going there. So, hey, no problem. Happy to do it. I love that kind of stuff. I'm really into fantasy football season should be about more than just, the wins and the losses. Like we all love to win, right? But if you can, you win a little bit of money, you make a little bit of money, give something back if you can. Not everybody has the ability to donate, and we understand. But man, if you win a few bucks, you make a few bucks, something like that, you know what? Pay it forward, find a cool charity. Jeff's obviously repping a great one here. We also just retweeted your pinned tweet, just so you know. So it's also up on our handle. No problem. Happy to help. And as I'm thinking about this here, let me reach back my bag of tricks here. I've just got all kinds of stuff back here. I've got this the signed Isaiah Simmons mini helmet, and if I can, let me get it on camera. The mirrored thing screws me up sometimes. I'll tell you what we'll do. And I don't know how to organize this yet, but if anybody wants to donate to your cause, I'm willing to give them an entry to get this thing for free, and I'll ship it to them.
That's awesome.
I don't know how to track it.
So kind.
But let's figure that out. We can do that kind of post show, after show. So if you're listening,
we can talk to Eric too. Eric's really good on that. So
so let's figure some of that out because I'd love to help you out. Let's try and drive some great money for the hospital, and let's help you out with the Pros v Joes here. And if you go ahead and you donate, let me know. My handle's on the screen at NFL_DiMatteo. Let us know at Gridiron Ratings at Gridiron Rating. Comment on the video. I'll be tracking all of it. We will find a way to get you entered. I will ship this helmet to somebody. Let's raise some money for a great cause. So a little something for you, Jeff. That's our donation to your cause today.
Man, that's so kind. Yeah, and I made the decision. I'm obviously very involved in Dynasty, and I've got way too many Dynasty leagues already. But I made the decision kind of last year that if I'm going to step into a redraft league, it's going to be charity based. And there are so many different good, fun charity tournaments that are going on in the space, and so I try to get involved in every one that I can just to try to raise money for whatever it might be. And if you're out there, if you're doing a charity league, I'm happy to help as best I can, amplify it, whatever I can do. But I think that that's something that, redraft leagues, you really get involved in Twitter and you get in dynasty leagues and you can kind of forget about the redraft leagues a little bit. But that's been my focus in that area. And that's how almost all of us start in fantasy football, is those redraft leagues. So kind of using those to give back, but also having that sense of community, I think makes a big difference.
Absolutely. It's what makes the Scott Fishbowl so special, right? Every year. We all look forward to that every year. So, which my team's probably going to get rocked. I drafted like 4 tight ends in the first 5 rounds. I don't want to talk about it. Well, I'll tell you what, let's kind of get into some of the stuff we planned on talking about tonight. So you're like a huge Bills fan, right?
I am a big, as you can see behind me,
yeah,
I do care for the Bills a little bit. Yes.
To be fair, I didn't know what was going to be behind you when I started setting up the show sheet and thinking about it. So Bills Mafia is one of the most passionate groups of people out there. And I know you follow your team very, very closely. Obviously, the offense is loaded, right? You got Josh Allen, you got Steph Diggs, and you bring in James Cook, you got Singletary, all kinds of dudes over there. Let's talk about the defense, though. That's the name of the show here, right? Getting defensive. Who do you love on the defensive side?
So the safeties, obviously, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. I think that, especially if you play IDP, that your eyes kind of go there. Tremont Edmonds, it's been a little bit of a disappointment, I think, for where he was drafted, what we kind of expected coming in. And Matt Milano, too, like, kind of having trouble staying healthy. So you're not getting the normal linebacker production, I think, from that you would expect from the Bills, or that you're really craving for IDP. So it's really those safeties are the first ones. And then this year, of course, bringing Von Miller in and seeing what he's got in the tank. But really, it's Von, and Von's very exciting. But I'm really interested in opposite Von and Gregory Rousseau, the first round pick from 2021. And I think that that's the guy that I think could really take a step forward. And if he does, that's where, and I think Von Miller there coaching him daily. And I've seen Bruce Smith hanging around camp coaching him. And it's like, he's got every guy that you can imagine in his ear. That's going to be the true guy. I think that could be the difference maker in the defense that can elevate it up that level. Cause they've had great production and play out of that secondary. Trey White, don't even mention him, but whether or not he can come back from that injury, and the safeties, obviously. So great on the back half, and linebackers, okay. It's really if that production can really step up from the defensive line, and really going to be Greg Rousseau, I think, is the guy that really kind of has to do that.
So I loved Rousseau coming out, and this is a guy that I looked at a lot. And when he was at Miami, I mean, he was lining up inside, outside. His pressure rate was actually, and this is something that we talked about on a previous show, is how pressure rate kind of predicts and can find sacks. This was a guy that had a pressure rate on par with like Chase Young, and he wasn't going with the second pick in the draft. So when you start putting those numbers together, you're like, well, wait a second, this guy's strong enough to be inside. He's fast enough to be on the edge. Like, how come he only had 4 sacks last year? And adding Von Miller, having that coach, having Bruce Smith around now, those things are certainly going to help, right? I mean, we're probably going to have him playing next to Ed Oliver, I would think, inside.
Ed Oliver, or I think Daquan Jones is going to be an underrated addition as well, because they had Star Lotulelei there last year, and I think that his game had fallen off a decent amount. And they had Kyle Williams kind of too, or not Kyle Williams, the dude that went to the Vikings, that was kind of the replacement for Henry Anderson, I think is. I'm like drawing a blank.
Yeah, well, of course, I immediately did the same thing. I was about to spout out a name, and then I was like, the name just didn't come out.
I think it's Henry Anderson, the guy from Stanford. But the defensive tackle from Stanford. Anyways, he was undersized, and I think Jones coming in there from Carolina, I think is going to do a lot to open up that interior, eat up blockers there. Ed Oliver taking that next step forward. And it does kind of sound like in camp that Oliver has been able to do that a little bit, that he has taken that step forward, because that was the guy that he was a top 10 pick. And even in that draft, he slipped a little bit from where they got him. The expectation that he was going to go even potentially a little bit higher for that. That's a guy that I think they need to click, because he's kind of reaching that point in his career where it's either going to happen this year or it's not going to happen. So using those different pieces. And that's where I think it makes a big difference of bringing Von Miller in there, of an experienced guy who can still do it. They had Jerry Hughes, they had Mario Addison there last year, and those guys were fine. Okay. But they had lost that portion of their game. And so I think that having that one kind of piece, and we've seen that before with defensive lines, where you really have that, you had that one piece in there that everybody's focusing on, and it kind of frees everybody else up. And so my hope is that that's what we're going to see out of this defense.
Cool. No, and I mean, Gregory Rousseau looked really good last year. I mean, 50 tackles from a D lineman is that's no joke. If you're
No.
playing in a balanced or in a tackle heavy league, he was a viable player. Like you could plug him in as a DL3 if you're playing a deeper roster, or he was at least not on waivers. Like he was on a roster. 4 sacks. Having Von Miller on the other side is going to help. Look at the Raiders last year. If anyone's curious as to how that can really impact a guy, what did Max Crosby do the year before they got Yannick Ngakoue? Ngakoue shows up, hits the ground running. Now, Max Crosby is catching more premium blocking. They can't just slide the entire protection at him. So now he's not getting 2 guys and a running back. He was just a menace last season. I kind of feel a similar way right now about Gregory Rousseau. You put Von Miller over there. You can't slide the blocking scheme at Rousseau anymore, or you're going to let Von Miller come at you free, and that's a terrifying prospect. So, and then these quarterbacks, you're looking around the AFC East, and you say, okay, well, we got to get Mac Jones. Okay, well, I mean, he's athletic, but not really. I'm not worried about him running away. He's not Lamar Jackson, right?
Yeah.
You got Zach Wilson. He's athletic, more athletic, but same kind of thing, right? And then you've got Tua, who, I mean, he's what does he have? Like some kind of plastic like hip? It's the same thing they put in like a 75-year-old man or something. I don't know. It's a full hip replacement.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm being facetious, but we're talking about 3 quarterbacks that you should be able to get after pretty easily, right? I love that up front, and I'm actually having this like IDP fever dream of the idea of having Rousseau and Oliver on the same side running all kinds of games and twists and stunts and letting those guys just trip up O linemen all over the place and watching quarterbacks perish.
Yes.
So, and I know that gets you excited as a Bills fan. I mean, I'm actually a Niners fan, but I love a good edge rush. We've got Nick Bosa, obviously.
Got
And
my
Eric
guy
Armstead.
Bosa. I'm a Buckeye,
Yeah.
so there you go.
Oh, okay, cool, fair
Yep.
enough. So there you go.
Yep.
And love those guys. So yeah, I love the edge rush. Love those guys. I think you've got a great thing going there. Linebacker. You mentioned Edmonds, Milano. Edmonds put up 100 tackles last year, right? I think we all just wanted more. Like we've got this kind of this. I don't want to say like it's maybe an overinflated sense of expectation, but I mean 100 tackles, like that seems probably fair for him, right? Like, maybe I'm missing the boat. Maybe not as a Bills fan. Maybe I don't understand the lapse there. But 108 tackles last year seems okay to me. Right?
Yeah. I think it's okay. They usually kind of use him more on coverage, especially with tight ends, and they kind of have Edmonds hawking that middle of the field, and like that's kind of the way they like to. They just don't have one of those guys that are really racking up tackles. AJ Klein last year played a decent amount, and then they drafted Terrell Bernard out of Baylor, and that's a guy that I think he's a probably special teams long-term replacement for Milano. Milano is older than what you realize. I feel like that one happened quick because I think he's 28, and it's one of those that like feels like he should be like 25-ish, and it's like nope, he's not. So now it's again, I don't know if it's really great for IDP, just maybe the secondary, because that offense is so good that teams are going to throw the ball and teams are trying to keep up, but they really do need the pass rush to click through.
Absolutely. No, I'm right there with you. I just find it so interesting. You don't find 2 linebackers typically like Milano and Edmonds who, they both put up good numbers, but you're just kind of like, I need just a little bit more, and you'd both be amazing. But I mean, 108 and 86 for the 2 guys last year, like that's pretty decent. Here's the thing. If you're plugging them in, guys, if you're watching the show right now, you're going to watch it later. 100-something tackles, no sacks for Tremaine Edmonds. Like this guy's still a linebacker 3-ish. Go ahead and plug him in. Don't let him go undrafted. But he's going to slide in drafts because he's not sexy anymore. Matt Milano, you're going to hear that name a lot. Probably going to underwhelm at under 100 tackles. I'll probably punt there and go in a different direction. What about the secondary? So we talked about Poyer. You mentioned the safeties, right? We know they're good. But I think the guy that stands out to me here is rookie Kaiir Elam. I know you're a Devy guy. I know you watch a lot of college ball. What's your take on Elam, kind of like preseason, if you can put that hat back on, and then kind of what you've seen so far through camp and preseason?
So coming into the draft, I was a little bit iffy on him just because I think he's more a classic shutdown corner, I kind of think, than a guy that can make plays on the ball. And
Okay.
but that's kind of come through like that in the preseason. I was just saw a stat even before we started that he's seen like something like 45 targets in the preseason and allowed like 2 receptions or something crazy. And then the other guy too that's kind of really shown, well, late round pick Christian Benford from Villanova has really kind of stepped up too. And the Bills need that. The Bills have needed that other corner because one, I don't know if Tre'Davious White is going to come back this year because he had that ACL injury around Thanksgiving. We've seen quick recoveries from ACL, but it doesn't seem like he's anywhere close like some of these other guys that we've seen come back close. And so that's obviously we know he's a huge piece of that secondary. And I think people kind of forget that, especially in that Chiefs game, they didn't have him back there. And
Right.
Levi Wallace got exposed. Dane Jackson got exposed. And now Levi Wallace is gone. So they need those young players to step up. If they hit with Elam, and then especially if they hit with Benford, that is a cheat code to really plug 2 young corners in there like that. You get White back, and, you're really rolling in that position.
Absolutely. Now, I know you're not I'm not going to try and put you on the spot here with injury analysis, but do you know if his was a clean ACL or was it an ACL plus other damage?
I don't know. No, I
Okay.
couldn't tell you that. No, I just know that he's it was kind of odd that I know he started camp and like there was one day that he like kind of worked out and then it kind of progressed to like he went from like almost being there to like now he's working on the side to like now we haven't seen him for a while type thing. So
Gotcha. Well, so feel pretty good about Kyrie Elam. I
yeah.
can't talk tonight. Kyrie Elam. I'm feeling pretty good about him. I actually thought when he came out, I was like, this is a guy that can cover. He can cover a lot,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
In today's NFL, you're seeing most teams running sub, right? You're in nickel more than half of the game now.
Yeah,
they
use
a sub.
That's really the Bills' base defense is they're really base nickel. They really only play those 2 linebackers for most of the time.
Bingo. And so my thought was, I was looking at your safeties, and you got Poyer and Hyde, and I'm like, these guys are 30 and 31 or so ish, maybe 31, 32 now. I'll have to double check the birth dates, but these guys cross over 30, and you have to wonder, like, how much do they have left in the tank? Like, did you notice, watching your guys last season, did you feel like there was any slowdown there? Do you think there's any cause for concern if you're playing Dynasty IDP? Maybe it might be time to sell or cut bait.
The biggest thing, Jordan Poyer's contract situation is really questionable because we've seen his production, but it seems like the team is not willing to commit to him long term. The concern there is they don't really have anybody that's coming up behind him. Part of me, as I was watching the draft, I was kind of hoping they'd get a little bit aggressive and go get Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame, and because he was kind of slipping in the draft a little bit there, and it's like, come on, guys, move up like 10 picks or whatever it might be, and add him in there, run that base nickel, use Micah Hyde kind of as that nickel back, and work Kyle Hamilton in there long term. Like I think that would have been fun. So I am concerned long term. It's just one of those that. When it hits, it hits. And so it's always when you're dealing with guys around 30 or even over 30, when that decline hits, you're not going to recoup any value. The bottom is going to fall out quickly. And they're right on the precipice of that. I don't know that I've seen the slowdown as much, but it's back of your mind, it's coming.
Sure. Well, that's kind of why I wondered about Elam, because I saw this guy and I was like, he feels like, and I don't know how big Rod Woodson was, but I felt like I was watching a player that had a similar skill set to like a Rod Woodson type. He can play some safety, play some corner, and be really good at both, right? And I don't know that he tackles well enough to be a strong safety, but I could see Elam being over the top, manning off the guy down the seam and taking away a guy there, and then also floating in like a cover 1 situation and just let him be the man over the top and track whatever's going on. I felt like he had good enough awareness. His FBI seems pretty high, but to be fair, I usually try to watch 300 snaps on any incoming rookie. That's kind of my threshold before I'll do analysis. But I was right at the 300 snap threshold. Like I didn't do like Kyle Hamilton. I think I watched like 800 snaps over the course of 2 or 3 seasons or whatever it was. And so there's a big discrepancy there, right?
Right. Exactly.
But, Hamilton was my number 2 player in this class, by the way, just regardless of position. So love that. And I love the fact that you were pining for him the way I was. I was like, please, San Francisco, if we trade Debo, let's go get Kyle Hamilton.
Dude, I love the safety position. Sean Taylor is like my all-time favorite player. And so I'm doing the I don't know if you've seen PFF, the all 22. I'm in one of those leagues, and I have Derwin James, and I'm blanking on. I have Kyle Hamilton, and I have another safety. Like I just went heavy on safeties. I just love the position. I just think it's very interesting. Like safeties and tight ends are the two things that I think are so interesting in the chess game of football that you can just do so many different things with them, and they can change the dynamics of the field. So I just love that position, and I played DB when I didn't quite make it, like I wasn't like varsity or anything in high school like that, but like growing up, I always played DB, so I
Oh,
always
that's
liked
cool.
that position.
Nice. Well, I'm like you. I love the mismatch, right? How can
Yes,
I create a
yes,
difficult situation to put the other team under some pressure, right? Under some duress.
yeah.
And the safeties can definitely do that. But you mentioned something. Now I've got a totally sidebar here. Tell me about that PFF All 22 things. I've looked at it. I haven't gotten into a league. I was a little excited by it. Give me the quick, like 30-second elevator speech on it. What's cool about it?
So the elevator speech on it, especially if you play Madden, if you play franchise mode in Madden, it is that, but in fantasy football. And so, you're kind of going through all 22, you're building your entire roster and you're building a dynasty. They've got the scoring is off PFF grades, but then they've got some tweaks in there that, they value the elite positions heavier. So like your quarterback is like a 9% grade, whereas like your center might be like a 3% over in your team overall. And so they value, corners, corner. I think that it could be a little bit higher because I think corners are a very important position, but edge rushers, wide receivers, tackles, quarterbacks, those types of things are valued pretty highly. Whereas like running back, linebacker, center are kind of down, guard are a little bit down the scale a little bit, but really you're building your whole team and you're putting it out there. You can pick your formation however you want to run. If you want to run 4 wide receivers, if you want to run base nickel, if you want to run a 34 defense, so you can you can draft your team towards that, build your franchise towards that. You start that every week, and they do have it set up so that if a guy gets hurt, you can have a sub in there. So they've got layers in it. So it's way beyond your normal fantasy experience. And they're running a deal right now that if you use code, so they came out, the price was closer to $60, but they have a deal right now. And we are the Devy Royale. We are partners with all 22. And if you use the code TDR10, you can play in this league for only $10 instead of the big dollar amount that it kind of started out with. And we're trying to fill them up. And so use that code TDR10, Devy Royale code, and only $10 will get you into this and you get a franchise in this. Draft quick because you go through a 53-man roster. You got 53 rounds in that draft. So it is legit. But it's just fun and it's different. And, I met those guys at the expo when I was out there in Canton, and they're great guys. I had conversations with them. So really exciting what they're doing with this product. You can't say enough about it. It's just a really fun, different league.
So, and of course, this was not meant to be a topic today, so I don't want to stay on this
You're
too long.
good. You're
But
good.
do you have to have like your own like 12 guys or 32 guys, or do you get like thrown into a league with some other folks that are also drafting? Like, how does
You
that work?
find you find your 12 guys.
Okay.
Well, we did it. So like we did it. We set it up with 12 guys. We did it. We did a Devy Royale league, and we had listener league essentially. And so we filled that up. So we did that, and that's how we did it. But
That is awesome. So, guys, you heard the promo code. I'm going to go ahead and grab that off the Play It Back and make sure I get the promo code and the details and links and all that. But we'll get that stuff on Twitter so you can see it, and I'll try to get it in the show notes
yeah,
also on YouTube. So we get all that, and we'll get you guys taken care of on the promo code. We've covered most of the Bills defense. We got all 3 levels squared away. We've really covered some cool topics tonight. I'm actually kind of excited about some of the diversity of the show so far. Uh, but there's one thing we haven't really covered as far as the Bills are concerned. And this is more of a statistical thing. I don't have any background data on this one. How many tables have you personally broken or jumped through?
I've broken one table. So I broke a table for Scott Fishbowl, not this past year, the year before. And so that video's out on Twitter. It was a little so the story. So I decided I'm gonna do this. And I'm a dad, and I didn't want to break a hip or anything like that. And I wasn't under the influence or anything like that. This wasn't at a tailgate or anything like that. So I go on Walmart and I buy the cheapest table because, I'm a man of economic concerns here. I buy the cheapest table I can find, and I go and pick this thing up. And this thing is like a child's table. It is like barely off the ground. And I was like, oh shit. And like I had bought the thing, and I was like, okay, well, this is it was like a $30 table at Walmart. And so I just threw it on the ground. And then so I tried as best I could to kind of set my phone down and kind of shoot up to it and kind of get a work a little bit with perspective on the angle there to not show that I'm obviously jumping through a child's table, but I gave it my all. I ran and I threw myself up and I gave it the good old the Macho Man elbow on it right through that table. I broke no problem, of course, because I'm a larger man and that was no problem to break that. But so I have done a table, but it wasn't anything. It obviously is on the internet that you can check it out, but it's not one of these crazy ones that I didn't snap my femur breaking a table or anything like that.
I'll tell you what, Jeff. Here's what we're gonna do. If the Bills get to the Super Bowl this year, okay, if you guys make it, I'm gonna set up a table and I'll find some of those like old, the was it the particle board, like
Yeah.
old timey tables. I'll see if I can track one down and I'll do a video for you of jumping off and smashing the table, and I'll put some logos of whoever you're beating that week on the table.
If we win the Super Bowl, I'm going through a damn real table. You better believe it. I apologize for the language there, but
You're
you better
okay.
believe it.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. I couldn't let the Bills Mafia thing go without talking about busting some tables because I love it.
Okay.
Whoop. Jeff, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
I
sorry.
blacked out for a second. That was I think my we had a little power blink here and everything
Okay.
just shuddered for a second. I apologize, everybody.
No worries.
I guess we've got a storm going on upstairs, so I'm down in the dungeon here, and
Yeah, I'm too.
I can't really hear much of anything. I knew we were due, but anyway, so hey, we're getting close to time here. Let's cover a couple other things. So you're a big Devy guy.
Yeah.
I know you're kind of new to IDP, so you don't cover this a whole ton, but we still know there's probably some key names that our listeners should be looking for draft season next year, right? When we start getting into rookies in January, February, March, and so on. Off the top, like who's like a defensive player that you want to see come into the NFL next year that you think is going to be just an absolute IDP monster?
Will Anderson of Alabama. Will Anderson is maybe the best defensive player that we've seen in college football. I don't even know when. He's that good. And he should not be. I don't know. I'm of the belief, of course, I'm an Ohio State Buckeyes fan and, I'd like to see my Buckeyes win the championship. So, I'm of the belief that Will Anderson should be exempted and should be in the NFL already, that we shouldn't have to force this guy to play a whole nother year of college football. But he's an outside linebacker. He's going to be an edge rusher, pass rusher, but he's going to play all over the field. He's very similar to Micah Parsons, but maybe even just a more natural pass rusher than Micah Parsons, like maybe Micah Parsons plus a little bit more. It's just he's a very, very interesting player. And then maybe less of an IDP guy, but Jalen Carter at Georgia is kind of the last piece, that one of the last pieces off that. We know how good that defense was last year, and obviously they've got dudes there this year, but he was a dominant interior player. And so I don't know how much of that's going to bleed through to IDP production, but he's going to go very early in the draft. Handful of linebackers, Noah Sewell at Oregon. You hear the name Sewell, you hear Oregon, and your mind kind of goes some places all immediately if you follow the NFL. So he's coming up. Henry To'oTo'o from Alabama, another linebacker. I wish I had some Buckeyes to point out to you, but I don't think we're going to have anybody in this class much worth worrying about, unless Josh Proctor really kind of comes through and clicks. But we got a couple of young guys there at Ohio State with Jack Sawyer and with JT Tumalau, who I think are going to those are going to be names that you're going to want on your radar. Edge rushers that everything in practice, it sounds like they've just been lights out. They came in as two of the top recruits in last year's recruiting class. So they'll have this year plus one more year beyond that. But those are just kind of some names to think about, get on the radar. But Will Anderson is crazy good, man.
I've been watching a lot of college ball too, and obviously I'm trying to keep up on these guys because, I write a ton of stuff, and a lot of it doesn't necessarily make it public, but I write a ton of scouting reports just so I can get a sense of what I want to do fantasy-wise, right? Will Anderson looks like an absolute monster. And I mean, the Micah Parsons comp, I kind of was like, ooh, I hadn't really thought of it like that, because Parsons was so unique coming out because of his just raw speed and athleticism. And I'm thinking like, well, Anderson's got some of that. That first step get off it's fast. I don't know if he's quite as fast as Kayvon Thibodeau, but I think his first 4 or 5 steps when he gets deep into the backfield, I think he's a little quicker at beating the lineman. He's a little better at using
Yeah.
his hands, a little more active. His hands and feet really jive quite a bit to set guys up and keep O linemen off balance. Definitely a great name to keep an eye on. You mentioned Sewell. I'm a big fan of his, actually. I love the way he patrols, basically from, I don't see sideline to sideline, but he's from number to number.
Yeah.
And I try to stay away from sideline to sideline because nobody really truly does that. It's like, how many guys do you see run from the left sideline to the right side? It never happens. But, and then the guy you said from Ohio State, Jack Sawyer, I don't follow a ton of guys out of high school into the collegiate game and assume, oh, this is going to be an NFL player. But if you're playing in an IDP Devy league, that name, Jack Sawyer, is one you need to keep an eye on. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. All of his workout metrics are off the charts. This is a dude that he's going to be able to play that 4-3 even front end or be the stand-up edge rusher. Yeah. And so I have zero proclivity saying that he's going to be an absolute stud, and he's going to really work out for Ohio State this year. I'll put it right out there.
Yeah. So Jim Knowles, if you're defensive, if you're college football, you should know the name Jim Knowles. I believe he won the Broyles Award last year for being the best coordinator in college football, but he's got a very unique system, and it's kind of it's a base nickel, but it's it's just very unique with the safeties and the way he uses different pieces around, and he's got this position, I think he calls it the bandit position, that he's putting Sawyer into, and it's basically a hybrid. Yeah, defensive end, put your hand in the dirt, maybe move inside, play linebacker a little bit, and just kind of, you're just out there to mess things up, and Sawyer's going to be in that role, and I think he's going to really excel in it.
And I can't be sure because I didn't have the wingspan measurement, but when I look at this guy, he looks like he has a condor's wingspan.
Yeah.
And you don't see that kind of thing on a defensive end all the time, because when you can get out there and just pole arm an offensive lineman and then run around him, that's terrifying for any offensive coordinator. So Jack Sawyer is a name that I'm very excited about. But no, I think those are all great ones. And obviously we'll talk more about rookies, in December and January, and we're going to do some stuff in season talking college ball. But cool. Was there any other players? Any IDP questions? I know you're new. You're playing in some leagues. Anything you want to cover before we wrap this thing up?
Not really. I guess maybe I do kind of have a question for you as you were looking at IDP. How do you kind of weigh like a corner like a Trayvon Diggs, a corner that is going to gamble, go for those interceptions, compared to like a safety that is going to be more steady, going for tackles, kind of that splash, like that boomer bust production, compared to kind of just that slow and steady production? That's something that I've kind of looked at, of like, how do I balance this? Or like, I play in some leagues, and a lot of the IDP that I've played have been best ball, and so I kind of loading up on we've done deeper rosters, and I've tried to get people involved in IDP and bring new beginners in the game and set these up as best ball. And so like one of the things that I've looked at is in Sleeper, a lot of these guys that have linebacker, defensive end eligibility, that are edge rushers, that have that splashier going for the sacks, compared to that standard middle linebacker that's racking up tackles. Like, how do you kind of weigh that risk reward versus kind of that steady production?
Well, so now you said a few things in there. One of the things that stood out was best ball. If you're playing best ball, like I'm playing ceilings in best ball, right?
Yeah.
I'm, everything else be damned. Give me the ceilings. And that's where I want a guy like Diggs. And I'm like, you know what? It may not be a situation where I'm going to sit here and be excited about his tackle production, but if he gets me a pick six, I'm probably crushing everybody that week. And he's a guy where, yeah, he can come out and get you 6 or 7 picks in a year, and that might be really useful in those weeks. But if you're playing weekly head to head and you've got to set a lineup and all of that, give me the tackles, give me the safeties. I devalue interceptions because they're kind of fluky. Like, how many times do you see a guy get double-digit interceptions in a season? It doesn't happen very often, right? I mean, before Diggs, wasn't the last guy like Kevin Byard like 4 years ago? Like, it seems like it never happens. So I'll stick with the tackles. Give me those guys like the Jeremy Chins of the world who just don't do anything but pile up tackles. He's basically a glorified linebacker. And you can count on that production, and it's something you can replicate week over week. So while other people are trying to figure out that guy on waivers and trying to find that next gem, you've just got your guy, and you can plug in your 12, 14, 16 points a week and call it a day, and then be worried about how you're going to drive ceilings on your offensive side.
Yeah, and that's what I did. So especially with that, having defensive linemen, having linebackers, I really loaded up on those guys that are dual eligible, the edge rushers, figuring that if I have a deep pool of those, that the ceilings will play through and be plugged into either the linebacker. I added a couple of those steady tackle guys at linebacker, but I didn't take like anything on the defensive line except for those guys with the dual eligibility, figuring that if they pop on ceiling, they might slot in linebacker or defensive line position, and I'm not worrying about who I'm starting there. I'm just taking the points after they go.
Right. I'm actually in a sleeper league where we play with 6 IDPs, 2 D line, 2 linebacker, 2 defensive back, and it's my primary kind of my home keeper league, if you will.
Yeah.
I kept Micah Parsons and TJ Watt
Yeah.
because they both have D end eligibility.
Yep.
So while everyone else is falling over themselves to go find 10, 12, 15 points at DL, those guys are putting up 25 or 30 every week. And so now I can go and dilly-dally around with my other picks, and I can get cute if I want to and, build a fun roster. So, yeah, you're 100% on it already. Yeah, put those linebacker edge guys, get them in the DL slots, find your dudes that are going to pile up tackles in the middle, get those in your linebacker spots. And the DBs, really, like, if you've got a guy that's a glorified linebacker, Jeremy Chin, Divine Diablo, these guys that are playing linebacker that have DB eligibility, I have no trouble rostering them. Now, Diablo might struggle for some snaps this year, but people always get hurt, and you don't want to be the last one seeing that guy on waivers. So if you've got 5 or 6 on your bench and you've got a spot, Diablo is a worthwhile add on sleeper.
Good stuff. Yeah, I appreciate it. I always like to hear. I think that some of what people are searching for in fantasy football advice is confirmation bias, and so I appreciate you, hearing that I'm on the right track.
No, I mean, well, we followed each other for a while, right? You're a pretty smart guy, so you can kind of dissect some of this stuff and apply really the offensive lessons. That's the big thing about IDP is that there's offensive lessons that we can apply to IDP. When I think about wide receivers and I'm thinking about target share, right? We always, this guy's a 30% target guy or a 25, whatever. What about tackle opportunity? Like we think about, okay, well, how many tackles will a team get? The Seattle Seahawks this year are going to have more tackles awarded to their roster than any other team in football. That suddenly makes guys like Jamal Adams hyper useful as a DB. Yes. Makes Jordan Brooks potentially the top tackler in fantasy and a candidate to be the number 1 overall IDP player. Cody Barton, very useful player. So now you can start kind of perusing that defense. The 4th or 5th best tackler on that defense is probably going to be a lot better than the guy in Green Bay who's going to have the fewest tackles awarded to their defense.
Yeah.
And that's where you can start to find those sleepers and those other guys, right? Use what you already know about offense and let's just start to apply it on defense and then go ahead and profit because that's really the gist of it.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting how to some extent there's like levels of kind of opposite thinking there where you're like, if you are just somebody that watches a lot of football or like you play Madden, whatever it might be, and you're thinking like, well, Jalen Ramsey and like Aaron Donald, and you're kind of like these guys of like, oh, I know these names. It's like, actually you want the dude that's on the bad defense that's just going to be on the field.
Yeah, 100%. And some of those guys are good players, right? Jordan Brooks is a good player. He's a 1st-round draft capital on him. This is a good player. And he's my number 1 linebacker this year, just kind of full disclosures, put him right out there.
Nice.
And we'll have some new stuff on the site. Actually, we're going to have a post going up in about 2 hours. We're shutting down the site for about 3 days, and we're going to be completely relaunching. And I haven't said this out loud on the air to anybody, but you're the first to hear it like anywhere.
Great. Awesome.
So what I'm doing is we're shutting the site. We're getting rid of everything we've had. All the written content's going to go away. We're going to re-release some evergreen stuff that's going to stay there forever. And all of our content is going to be image-based and infographic-based. So we're going to have some stuff out there about tackle opportunity, and we're going to, instead of putting it in a 5,000-word article or a 2,000-word article, it's going to be an infographic that you can look through and identify, well, here's the Seattle Seahawks. Here are the players I should be looking at. Next page, here's the 49ers. Next page, here's the Bills. Next page, and you can take in 100,000 words now in 10 minutes while you're on the commode in the morning.
That's nice.
And so it's going to be a totally different look and feel. So if you end up tuning in and you're into this thing, we should be back up Saturday mid-morning. But I took the day off tomorrow to worry about teardown tonight and work through Friday and get it up on Saturday. So some interesting stuff there. And, just taking the same lessons, right? We know how to play offense. It's the same shit on defense. Like, let's just target share is now tackle opportunity, right? We talk about number of carries. That's pressure rate. Like these things, that volume starts to matter. It all starts to line up. So, but it sounds like you're already on it, man. So you're doing a great job. And, I think we're getting kind of up against time here. I know we talked at the top of the show about some of the stuff you're working on. Is there anything we failed to hit on before I turn you loose here?
No, I think we covered it pretty well. We have the Patreon Devy Royale. We have a huge college football guide that if you're even not even playing Devy, but if you just love college football, it's only $3 to join our Patreon. It's called the Devy Manifesto, and it will tell you all the Power Five. You can read through this thing and know all the key players on the Power Five. You know the depth chart, know the tendencies of the teams, everything that you could want. And we've really tried to gear our content to try to go beyond just that fantasy focus to like, we just want to talk about football. And, I love football and I know on Twitter I get a little bit goofy, but, at heart, I'm just a football guy and I love it. And so I love to go deep into it, and things like the All 22 or talking to you about IDP are all just being able to stretch those wrinkles in your mind and learning more about the game and really exploring different areas and getting beyond just kind of that, well, I'm worried about this guy for Dynasty, or I'm worried about this guy for redraft. What's going to happen here? It's just talk about ball, and that goes so much further, I think, and that really kind of connects a lot more, I think, than just kind of, because we're all in weird leagues. And so like, if you're got your own thing going on, it's kind of hard to translate. But if you talk about football, if you get back to the roots and you really talk about the players and talk about schemes and concepts, there's so much that can be grown there. And so check that out. Footballguys.com, everybody knows it, but it's a great site. And again, we are doing a lot behind the scenes. We have a lot of growth that's coming through, a lot of video stuff that's coming through. So check that out, footballguys.com, of course, and join and feel free to do that. Check out All 22. Use our code TDR10 to join All 22 and try to get one of those leagues in before the season starts. And again, Pros vs. Joes. Check that out on my Pros with Joes. Check that out on my pinned tweet, and try to help me raise a little bit of money for Nationwide Children's, and that's probably the most important thing in my heart right now.
Awesome. Well, and then, to tack onto that, like I said, I've got this mini helmet here. I don't know how we can go about making that work, but I'm happy to give this to you guys to help raise some more cash for that too, because I love your cause. I'm all about it. I have so greatly appreciated this time, Jeff. This has been a lot of fun. And, everything you're doing in the industry in terms of being on Twitter and the way you promote yourself and promote, football guys and everybody else is just, absolutely fantastic. And the fact that you spent some time here with us has been great, because, guys, if you don't know Jeff and you're not following his work, A, you're making a mistake, but B, he's a busy guy, right? You just heard a bunch of the stuff he's up to and he's doing. He took some time to be here with us tonight to chat and kind of hang out. And I really appreciate that. But we're going to go ahead and I'm going to share that link. We'll DM a little bit, post show here, and I'll get all those all those codes and things, and we'll help you promote that too. So, but with that, for the incomparable, I'm going to use that word now because I have really enjoyed this that much. Jeff Bell, I am Jeff DiMatteo, and we wish you nothing but success, and we'll see you next week.